time for another webinar from the Naviate team. As we said last time in December, we're going to do a webinar series going on the first Thursday every month. So first out this month is the Naviate Daylight. We're going to walk you through how our Daylight application in Revit works for you, and present the new things that we've done last year as well. So together with me today, I have Mehmed. He's the product owner for Naviate Daylight, as a part of being also the product owner for the whole architecture portfolio, like Naviate Architecture, Naviate Site and Landscaping, etc. So, and myself, I'm the global product manager for the Naviate portfolio overall for Revit. And we are the ones that are going to take you through today's sessions on Naviate Daylight. So the main topics today, we will show you how we do the calculation on the daylight performance in Revit, all the visualization parts, also reporting, and also how to configure and work with materials in the properties. So you do the correct calculations based on the materials, of course. For a little bit about the presentation today, we will record this presentation and it will be shared to YouTube. So if you have any colleagues or other ones that you would like to see this webinar, it will be available next week for you to share. And of course, we have a question panel on the right side. So you feel free to ask questions during the presentation, and we will do a short Q&A in the end and wrap up some questions, and hopefully can answer them as well at the end of this demo today. So for any new attendees that doesn't know what Naviate is about, it's a product portfolio developed for AEC professionals by AEC professionals. Everything will focus on accelerate, streamline, project setup, model management, documentation, and help you to work faster and more efficient with your Revit product. So save time, increase control, optimize workflows. And today's presentation is all about Naviate Daylight, the 2023 version. So as I said, I have Mehmed with me today that will walk us through the presentation or the demo. So I will hand over to him to walk us through. So Mehmed, thank you for joining today, and you have the screen. Here you go.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, my turn. So for today, I'm going to show you Naviate Daylight. But before that, I would like to talk about some additional details that Jan already didn't mention. And that will include the benefits of Naviate Daylight. By that, I will also highlight some solutions that we have provided to the common problems that analysis softwares have. A lot of analysis softwares have some challenges and issues, and we want to highlight the solutions that we provide with our software. Then I'm going to talk about the actual features and improvements. That's kind of the most important part. Do the live demo within Revit. And after that, we can have a Q&A session. So the first thing is for me to highlight the benefits of Naviate Daylight. And I'm just going to use a simple slide for this. So the benefits that I would like to highlight today for you, and again, highlight the solutions that we provide for these, based on these benefits. So the first one, and I think this is one of the most important ones, is that Naviate Daylight is developed to comply with multiple regulation standards. We support various daylight regulation standards, and for anyone who is working with providing the daylight performance based on a regulation standard, they know that specifically, for example, when it comes to the Nordics, a lot of the countries have quite specific regulations that need to be met when it comes to daylight performance, and that requires from architects to do a lot of calculations manually, and a lot of checkings need to be done manually within the model in order to provide the needed data for these regulation standards. So our software is basically automating the calculation of the daylight performance based on the selected standard. So that's one of the main benefits that I would like to highlight, that we are supporting a number of calculation standards. We are going to talk about which standards we can talk about that at the end. But that's the first benefit. The second benefit, of course, again, anyone who has used analysis tools, they know that integration within the main software is not that common when it comes to analysis softwares, and that's basically one of our goals, is to provide a software that is fully integrated within Revit, and you don't need to do any exports out of Revit in order to do the analysis, which, as you can imagine, will reduce quite a lot of manual work in order for you to get the output for daylight performance. So those are, I think, the two major benefits that our software is providing. The second two that I would like to mention, they're more into the area of features, but I would like to highlight them also as benefits. One of them is design suggestions. So our software is providing design suggestions based on the selected calculation standard, which means basically we will tell you if your windows are meeting the your window dimensions are meeting the requirements based on the selected standard, your room dimensions if they're okay based on the calculation standard, and also we will give you a lot of information about the surroundings around your building. We'll tell you if there are shading obstructions. We'll tell you also if there are any elements that don't comply with the current regulation, and you will always have that available within Revit to see and act on those suggestions accordingly, which can be a quite nice feature and give you a much more focused design process. And the last thing that I want to highlight is the reporting and visualization features that we have. We have a various number of reporting and visualization features that can meet a lot of the needs when it comes to providing reports to the required institutions for checking, when you are checking your daylight performance. So that's also one thing that I'm going to show you in the live demo. So those are the four things that I wanted to kind of in high level highlight on this demo. Those are benefits of Naviate Daylight. Now I'm going to immediately jump into the demo within Revit. So yes, starting from here. So when it comes to Naviate Daylight, you will have two ways to start Naviate Daylight from Revit. The first way is if you navigate to the Analysis tab and just run the Daylight tool. This will basically do the complete calculation for the complete project. So we will identify all the rooms or spaces or areas in your project, depending on what you have selected for calculation, and we will calculate the daylight performance for all of these rooms found in the project. And the second way to run the feature is by using pre-selection. So you can pre-select any number of rooms, and through the Modify tab, you can just run the Daylight tool, and it will only calculate the daylight performance for the selected rooms. So basically, what I'm showing you here is when you want to have a complete daylight performance report, you don't need to select any rooms, you just run the feature. And when you are in the early design phases, where you want to check your current daylight performance, and if needed, you will make some additional changes later on. In that case, you can use pre-selection and just check the performance for a number of rooms that you maybe think that are not meeting the requirements, and then you will act based on the output that will provide you, which will provide you a much faster results and a much more focused overview of your results. So for this demo, I will do the analysis for this complete floor plan. And I actually already have done the calculation because I didn't want to yes, here it is. I didn't want to spend time on the calculation, so we can immediately dive into the output that Naviate Daylight provides. So just a quick overview of the UI. So starting from the top, you will see some overall results, how much of the selected rooms are meeting the daylight ratio requirements, what is the minimum, what is the maximum daylight ratio, and for the future we are planning to extend this overview data, provide more data about daylight factor, for example, but for now these are the overviews that we are providing. And moving down below here, you will have 3 tabs. One, window to floor. This is the main dialog, and I will talk mostly about this one. And window to wall, so we are also providing data about the window to wall ratio, and we'll also provide a lot of extensive data about your windows within the rooms that you have selected. Back to the first tab. So this is kind of the main grid view, so to call it. Here you will be provided with 2 types of daylight calculations. The first type is daylight ratio, and the second type is daylight factor calculations. So if you take a look here, you will be provided for each of your rooms, we will calculate the daylight ratio. And by double clicking on the room, you will immediately see where that room is located. So that's a highlight functionality that Naviate Daylight also has. So in addition to the daylight ratio, as I said, you will also be able to see your average daylight factor results, your median daylight factor results, and additionally, you will also be provided with the minimum, average, and maximum luminance values for each of your rooms. In addition, of course, you will get the minimum and maximum daylight factor. Then moving forward, when it comes to the daylight factor results, you will also get the uniformity ratio and what was the calculation height used for each of these rooms. So that's kind of in general the data about daylight ratio and daylight factor that you get. Also, you will be provided with some general room informations like what is the room number, room name, the floor level, the area of the room, the actual glass area, and corrected glass area, which ultimately gives you the actual or the daylight ratio. One more thing when it comes to this grid view, which can be quite useful and important, are these indicators here. So based on the selected calculation standard, currently I have the Norwegian regulations selected. These indicators will tell you if your daylight ratio and daylight factor are meeting the required values. So for example, for this room, both daylight ratio and daylight factor are met. And in compared to this one, where only the daylight ratio is met, which basically gives you a quite focused overview, and then you can immediately act on the rooms that don't meet a certain requirement. So yes, that's about the output that we are providing. When I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, we have 2 types of calculations, daylight ratio and daylight factor. One thing that I forgot to mention about daylight ratio is that we also provide the window to wall ratio result for each of the rooms that you have selected. So that's also one additional ratio calculation we are providing. So yes, that's about the calculated daylight ratio and calculated daylight factor results. You can do a lot of things with this data, and that's the next thing that I'm going to show you. So after you have reviewed your results, you can do, as I said, quite a lot of things with them. And I'm going to show you now some features for visualizing the results. So we have 2 features here that will help you visualize your daylight ratio and daylight factor calculations. For example, Revit floor plan. This feature will provide a floor plan that will visualize your daylight ratio results. So if I run this feature right now, what it will do, it will immediately create floor plans. So if I go here and show you this, so it created for each of the levels found in the project, it created a daylight ratio floor plan. In our case, the floor plan that is being calculated is level 2. So as you can see here, you will be provided with a color scheme, which basically gives you a smooth coloring based on how high the daylight ratio is. So the lightest one, or the lightest room, is the one with the highest daylight ratio, and the darkest one is the one without any daylight ratio or with the lowest daylight ratio. That's kind of one visualization of the daylight ratio results. And the other floor plan that we are creating is the daylight ratio meeting requirements, or let's call it like that, floor plan. And this one basically tells you how many rooms are meeting your requirements. As you can see here, everything is green, and the reason for that is because the rooms that are not meeting the daylight ratio are defined to not require any daylight. Like for example, the toilet, as you can see, both daylight ratio and daylight factor is not meeting the requirement. But when you turn off this checkbox that this room doesn't require any daylight, it will regard that door as satisfactory. That's why everything is green, but actually it is not. If you turn on this and then run the feature, you will be provided with red or green colors. So basically a yes or no color scheme. Green for meets the daylight ratio, red for does not meet the daylight ratio requirements. So those are the two floor plans that we are providing, visualizations that we are providing for daylight ratio. For daylight factor, when you run this button here, it will create a floor plan with a heat map, basically telling you in a quite visualizing way how much light does your rooms, how much light your rooms are having, and which parts of the rooms are not very lit or are too much or have too much light. So for example, here what you can see is a heat map of this complete floor plan. You can do quite a lot of things with this visualization. You can change and use different styles, which will provide different informations to you. Like for example, this one is quite pleasing visually, and it is providing a lot of information. So the red parts are quite high in daylight factor, and yeah, of course, the blue ones are too low. And then you can maybe see where to place your working desks, your dining areas, and etc. Whatever needs to be very lit, you place those elements or furniture in that area. And the opposite way around, if you need less light, then you kind of act on it based on this visualization. That's kind of one way to visualize your daylight factor results. We have other ways to visualize your daylight factor, like for example, if you go to this parameter in the floor plan properties panel, you can find the default analysis display style. And when you run this feature, you will be provided with a dialog where you can change the style. For example, this one is for point values. So if I would do this, okay, it will basically show me the point values that you have basically defined, the grid settings, and it will tell you what value each of these point values has. Currently, I have turned off the point value text to be shown, but yeah, I think it's good enough to show it like this. In this setting, you will be able to show also for each point value, you will be able to see what daylight factor value it has. For some regulations, this is quite important. But for this global demo, we don't need to go in detail about that. If I go back to this heat style, you can do some additional things. If you go to the color, you can define the color mapping of your heat map. So I can change the color of the higher values to be red. And yeah, anything on the border of the required value can be a different color. And if I click OK, those colors will be applied. One other thing that's quite useful when it comes to this heat map visualization is this. If you go back to the color and switch the color mapping to ranges, this will basically provide you a heat map without any smooth. It will basically provide you rough edges for the different values that you have defined in the color mapping. So anything above 1% of daylight factor will be green, anything below 1% of daylight factor will be 1%. So you can immediately basically know exactly which part of your room are meeting the requirements or are not meeting the requirements. So that's when it comes to visualizing the daylight factor and daylight ratio results. If I go back one more time here, I can move back to the gradient and use that one. There are another set of tools that will help you visualize your results, and this one is mostly related to the windows themselves. So these two options are room-based or space-based or area-based. But if you go to the Windows tab, as I mentioned, you will see all the windows found within the rooms that you have selected for the calculation. And it will give you quite a lot of information about each one of those windows. But when it comes to the visualization, what you can do is you can right-click on any of the windows and you can create a elevation view or section view. If I go back here, you'll see what has been created. So we will automatically create a elevation view with a tag of the window, which will give you quite extensive information about your windows. And again, if I go back here, I can do that the same. For example, in this case, let's do sections. Let's see this. Yes, you can see this. For example, this can be used when you have shading obstructions in front of the window and you want to document that in some way, like for example, how I did it here. I created this section and modified it to basically show the shading angle in front of this window. So in this case, yeah, this shading angle is quite large, and that will be provided as an information in the main dialog as well. That's one of the next things that I'm going to show. So yes, as I said, another set of functionalities to help you visualize your results, and those are these two options. Create elevation view in Revit and create section view in Revit. This can be used on doors, curtain walls, and windows. That's about the visualization functionalities that we are providing. And the next step is, the next part that I'm going to show you is how you can report your results. Again, quite a large amount of functionalities or ways to report your results are present within our feature. One of the first is the save result feature. So if you run this functionality, it will tell you that the results are saved successfully. What does this mean? This means that everything that I showed you here, not everything, but the main data that I showed you in this output review will be saved to Revit parameters. So if I go back to, let me just turn off a couple of these views. if I go back to the floor plan, and I can now select a room, and you will see that a number of parameters have been created and saved on the rooms. So as you can see here, a lot of the data that I mentioned are saved here. So you will see the daylight ratio, or the calculated daylight ratio, the required value, the glass area found within this room, the daylight comments. This is the design suggestions that I mentioned. I will talk about them in a minute. And of course, the calculation height, the required daylight factor, the actual daylight factor, and additional information that you see here. So that's one set of Revit parameters that we are creating. If you go to the windows, you will also see another set of parameters. These are also daylight parameters that we are creating, and they will tell you what is the gross glass area, what is the corrected glass area of your windows, and it will tell you what is the shading factor of this, or the light transparency of this window, in addition to some additional parameters like the number of panels and the glazing bed area. That's more for curtain walls, but those are more details. You can look that up on the help pages when you try this feature. But as you can see, a lot of parameters have been created, and they can be used for reporting in a number of ways. For example, I have a room schedule here, and all of these parameters that I mentioned in rooms can be used in schedules, and they can be placed on sheets or exported in different ways. So I'm going to talk about exporting in a second, but that's one of the ways to report your results. So whatever you can do with the Revit parameters when it comes to reporting, we will provide them to you, and yet then you can use all the other Revit functionalities to report your results however you like. So that's reporting feature number one. Reporting feature number two is export to Word document. This one is also a quite nice feature. So let's say I do it like this, level 2 daylight performance. This will automatically generate a Word report to you. This Word report will be customized based on the selected standard. So for example, this one is in Norwegian. You'll be provided with some general information about the daylight requirements based on this calculation standard. And then you will be provided with the daylight factor or daylight ratio results. This means window to floor ratio. And we will list out all the rooms and their daylight ratio results. We'll also provide information about daylight factor, which again, all the data that is showed you in that review will be exported in these tables. And then lastly are the window list and the data about the windows, which also will be exported for you. One thing that's important to know or nice to know and have in a report functionality like this is that this template can be customized by you however you want and used as such every time when you run this report functionality. Those instructions are found on the help pages if you want to know how to do that. But that's possible. So that is report functionality number two. Number three is this is a common use case that this kind of data you want to have in an Excel file. You can do that also with this with Naviate Daylight. Simply by right-clicking anywhere in this review, you can save as an Excel file, and I can do that right away. Level 2 performance, and you will be provided with a Excel file with all the data that you have basically seen in the review. There is currently an issue with the rounding these units. That's something that we will fix for the future release. But this is how it is currently. Due to that, I want to just quickly show you one other way how you can export your daylight results in Excel, and maybe not directly related to Naviate Daylight, but it is a mixed workflow with another Naviate feature, and that's the export import feature that we have in Naviate Accelerate. So for anyone that has Accelerate or has used Accelerate, they will be able to do this. So here, what basically you can do, you can select the daylight schedule, and you can define if you want to create a format that is supporting pre-importing, which is quite nice. And if I do this, when I export this feature, let's go out to the daylight performance. This feature will immediately create a much more cleaner version of the data based on the schedule, and you can change a lot of this data. But of course, the data that is editable, you can change it. You can, for example, change the calculation height on your rooms and re-import this feature back again, re-import this file back again, and all the changes that you have made to the Excel file will be changed on the rooms that are found within this schedule, which is quite nice when it comes to collaboration. So this was kind of also a collaboration feature that I wanted to show you in addition to reporting. So yes, that was the things that I wanted to show you when it comes to reporting. And those are all the features that we have for reporting. So export to Word, export to Excel, and of course I can talk about additional ways to report your results. Like, for example, you can use Revit sheets, and all the views that we have created, you can add them to a sheet. So like, for example, let's say that was one of the views that we have created. You can add these requirements number 2. This is the daylight calculation, daylight ratio calculation. So now I'm a little bit messy here right now, so forgive me about that. But for example, yes, I already have it. Yes, if I remove it. Okay. For some reason, yes, here it is. Sorry. Yeah, currently the scale is quite high on this, but of course, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, basically what I tried to show you is how all of these views that we have created can look on a sheet. And yeah, unfortunately, something happened with the scale here, and I don't want to lose time on this. But yeah, it should change it back. But anyways, all of these views and the schedules and the Revit parameters can be used in a lot of different ways to report your results. And yeah, I kind of summarized all of them here right now. So unfortunately, I wanted this to look much better, but anyways, you see my point and the benefit behind this. So I can continue. The next part is basically just go a little bit more technical when it comes to the product itself, and I would like to talk about the settings and also the configuration of the material properties. So if I go back to the dialog, you'll have this button, settings. When you run it, you will have 2 tabs, and one tab will be for daylight ratio calculations or settings, and the other one will be for daylight factor. Currently, in this tab for daylight ratio settings, you will be required to select the standard based on which you want to do the daylight performance checking. And down below here, you can define the settings for daylight ratio, like for example, which glass materials are going to be identified as glass, which materials are going to be mullions or spandrel materials, and which rooms will be balcony rooms. Those rooms are taken into account in different ways across different relations. So we provide the possibility to define which rooms are balcony rooms, and for those we will not calculate daylight values, but rather include them in the calculation in a different way. And you can also define how much of the surroundings that you want to include when it comes to daylight ratio calculations. I'm not going to go too much into details about this, but let's move on to the daylight factor area. And here you can define a number of settings. When it comes to the custom rendering settings, you will be able to define the parameters that are going to be used for the calculation. Any more experienced daylight analysis specialist will know the effects of these parameters. So basically, they are affecting the accuracy and the performance of the analysis. If you want more accuracy, you'll make necessary changes on these values. We provide some detailed information about this on the help pages. And by changing this, you'll get very accurate results. And the opposite way around, if you decrease the values on these parameters, you will get quite fast results, but not that accurate. So depending on the need and requirements of the project, you will know which values to put in this setting. But for the more novice users, I always propose to use the default properties, the rendering settings that we are providing. They are basically optimized settings for accuracy and performance. They will provide fairly fast results and accurate results. So yes, that's about that one. And here you have some general settings where you can define the wall offset of the calculation points and the distance between the calculation points that we're using for the daylight factor calculation. I can briefly show that on this floor plan. If I go back here, this is the one. So the wall offset, as you can see, this is the 500mm offset from the walls. So no points are outside this boundary are taken into account for the calculation. And when it comes to the calculation point distance, when I used the different point style that I mentioned, you saw that the calculation points are distributed with a specific distance. And yeah, that's the distance that you specify in the settings for each of these rooms. So yes, about the settings, one more thing, and that's about the configuration of the material properties. So you will have, that's a quite important feature to have in software like this. And that's why we have provided two ways to define the material properties in your project. The first way is on a category level, and that setting you can find in the Daylight Factor tab, and here it is, called Override, Material Reflectance, and Transmittance. And these options here, this table here provides you a number of categories that are mostly that can have a significant effect on the daylight performance, and that's why we provided the ability for you to define the reflectance and transparency of each of these categories. Not each, but yeah, for example, for glass elements, for glass materials, we'll provide you with a light transmittance setting. So currently it is 85%. So all the windows or the glazing areas or glazing materials that I have in the project will This is the light transparency that will be used on all of the windows, curtain walls, and doors with glazing panels. And on down below here, you will be able to define the reflectance for roofs, ceilings, walls, columns, etc. And of course, of the top surface and the surrounding buildings. I'm just going to briefly mention the surrounding buildings here. Currently, the workflow used for the surrounding buildings is that you will be required, if you want to have surrounding buildings in your project, you will have to use mass elements as some kind of conceptual massing elements to represent your surrounding buildings. Like, for example, like I did here. So if I go to level 2, you will see that I have a number of surrounding buildings. And if I go to the 3D view, these are the conceptual masses that I use to represent my surroundings. And one important thing is from the last release, we have provided the possibility to have these elements in links. So now Naviate Daylight is supporting Revit links to be included in the calculations. So that's also one step closer to the Revit integration that we were talking about in the beginning. So yes, I would like to talk a little bit more about the settings and the material properties. So as I said, the first way to define the material property is on a category level, and this is this functionality here that I showed you. And the other way to do it is a little bit more complicated and requires more manual work, but that will not stay for long like that. We have plans to improve that. But anyways, I would like to show that to you. So the second way to modify or define the material properties is when you turn off this functionality, the material properties that we are using in that case for the calculation is from the actual materials. So the first one is on a category level. The second way to modify the properties is on a material level. Like, for example, for this window, you can modify, I'm not sure where the material parameter is. So if I go on edit, yeah, here it is, glass material. So you can define any material for this type of window or instance, or whatever the material is it either instance or type, you can define the properties here. For glazing materials, this is the value that we are using. So if you want to define the light transparency of this type of window, you basically use this reflectance property here. So let's say I want a transparency of 80%, because this is a reflectance parameter. So in a way, it's the opposite of light transmittance. So in that case, if you want an 80% transparency, you just write 20 here, and that's the value that will be used for the calculation. That's for glazing materials, which is quite simple, but it is a little bit complicated when it comes to solid elements. So for example, for this wall, if I wanted to define the reflectance, you would have to go to edit type, edit structure, and whatever material is on the exterior or interior finish, you would have to modify each one of those. We are supporting images. We will basically, for example, in this case, we will calculate the average RGB value. That's the color of the wall. But for example, if I select another, let's say this one. Okay, this is a glass material. Let's say this material, this is a generic material, but you would have to define the color manually on your material. Like, for example, if I do this here. So if you want 0% reflectance, which is not likely, but anyways, I just want to give you the principle behind this setting. So if you wanted a wall of 0 reflectance, that would be a completely black wall, and you would use 0, 0, 0 here. This is now 0% reflectance. If you wanted to have 100% reflectance, you would have to use 255, 255. Those are the maximum values in the RGB spectrum. So this now means that this wall is completely white, and that is 100% of reflectance. And anything in between will be the value that you probably want. So for example, if you want 70, we provide a reflectance calculator on our help pages, and there you can see how you can, in a more easier way, calculate this, the reflectance, if you want to do the material modification on a material level. But as I said, I know this is a little bit too much of manual work, and we are aware of that, and our customers are aware of that, and we kind of are planning to improve this in a much more user-friendly way. But those are currently the two ways that we are providing to modify the properties. And yes, I think I can stop here. I will talk more and more about this. There are a lot of different functionalities that I would like also to show you, but that's maybe something for a more detailed demo. So
Great.
yes, maybe the last thing about Revit, sorry, Jan Tore, this is kind of the last thing about the live demo. And the last slide that I wanted to show you is, and unfortunately when my PowerPoint crashed, I lost that slide, but I can show it like this. So the supported regulation standards that we are currently supporting, we are supporting all the Nordic regulations. So Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, with their own specific regulations, are supported within Naviate Daylight. And when it comes to Europe, we are supporting Dutch regulations and lead calculations. Option 2, that's basically the simplified method. That's actually the daylight ratio calculation that we are currently supporting. And we have a plan to expand this in the future as Naviate family or the Naviate products are global. We, of course, want to also provide more regulations in the future. So yes, that was kind of it from my side. Jan Tore,
Okay. Yeah.
do you have anything
Great.
to add?
Yeah, no, I think you covered almost everything that we would like to cover today. I have one question from one of the attendees, and he's talking about when you are working with a daily factor for rooms with indirect lighting. I'm not sure if you have covered that before. For example, if you get light through an interior window in an office from the other room, that's not.
Of course, it will be included. It will be included. What we do when it comes to daylight factor, we basically send the complete. So let's say if this is the model. These are the linked elements, and when you, for example, calculate just for one room, if you calculate the daylight performance, we will send the complete model to Radiance. That's the calculation engine that's used for these kind of simulations. We'll send the complete model, and that will include, for example, a window that's found in between two rooms. So we will include that also in the calculation, of course.
Yeah. So no consideration is to be taken with it. It's included in that sense.
Yes. Yes.
That's cool. Then I guess I will take over the screen.
Yes, please.
And close up. Let me see. So, thank you, Mehmet. It was a proper walkthrough on the Daylight application as it is today. And that brings us over to the ideation portal we have for all of our Naviate products. So if you have any needs of additional features or improvements that you would like to see happen in the development, we have an ideation portal that you can go into and add your suggestions and vote for other ideas as well. We have a couple of those in here already. It's available on the link in the bottom, and it's also available through the naviate.com page below resources, a direct link to the ideation portal. So please, if you have anything that we would like to see happen in Daylight, add it here and we will work through it through development. Another thing is that as I said, we are doing these webinars monthly, every first Thursday in every month. So the four to come in February, we have the architecture, talking about door and windows drawings, the new one we have available. We're going to go into site and landscaping in Mars, and Naviate MEP, a product we have onboarded from our colleagues in the US to be presented in April. And in May, we have Accelerate. We are doing some major rework and changes in Accelerate, and we'd like to share that with you on 4th of May. This is the link. So also under Insights on the Naviate.com page, you will see a list of all the webinars available, provided by us from Symmetry centrally, and also for our colleagues in the different countries like UK and US as well, going forward. And being a Naviate subscriber or Naviate customer, you have access to a lot of things. Like we have the website, you have the ideation portal, the blog. We are having bi-weekly blog posts covering from daylight, architecture, site and landscaping. There's a community that you can share ideas, have discussions. There's an extensive help desk part with a lot of documentation and videos. And last but not least, the e-learning part that gives you access to a wide range of different learnings within the Autodesk portfolio, in addition to Naviate as well. And the last part, to stay informed and receive all information coming out from Symmetry and on Naviate, please subscribe to the Naviate newsletter, and you will be informed when we are doing releases, updates, and news like the webinars and blog posts, etc. And if you would like to get in touch with us directly, here you have the email addresses, both from Mehmed and myself. And if you want the generic one, it's info@naviate.com. So I guess we have used our time today, Mehmed.
Yes, we did.
We did. So thank you very much for joining today. Hope we see you next time. And any questions you have after this presentation, please reach out to us and we can try to answer them out as best as we can. And hopefully you will go to Naviate.com and download a trial and test it out based on what you have seen today. So thank you so much for today, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, and bye-bye. See you again.